The cutting wind of New York blew against the pristine windows of the limousine gliding down Fifth Avenue. Inside the vehicle, Austin Lancaster observed the city with the same coldness with which he analyzed his multimillion-dollar acquisitions. At 35, he was a jewelry magnate, the owner of Lancaster Diamonds, an empire built on perfection and luxury. But behind the imposing facade was a man obsessed with control and superiority. To Austin, life was a game where only the shrewdest emerged victorious. It was in this setting that his life's trajectory took an unexpected turn. On an ordinary late afternoon, as his chauffeur maneuvered the limousine through the bustling streets, something caught his attention. A young woman walked with calculated steps along the sidewalk, a guide dog at her side. Her simple dress and dark glasses contrasted sharply with the grandeur of the city around her. On impulse, Austin lowered the window. "You don't think you're playing with danger, walking around like that?" he said, his tone laced with sarcasm. The young woman stopped, turned toward the voice, and smiled faintly. "The real danger is seeing the world and finding nothing of value in it," she replied calmly. Austin remained silent for a second. That unexpected response unsettled him in a strange way. Before he could reply, the traffic light turned green, and the limousine moved forward. But something within him had already been stirred. In the following days, the incident was pushed to the back of his occupied mind. His company faced an unexpected challenge. Lancaster Diamonds was losing ground to a new competitor, one that was revolutionizing the jewelry industry with bold and innovative designs. Investors were growing restless, and Austin was growing impatient. Armand Keller, his right-hand man at the company, walked into the meeting room carrying stacks of reports. "Mr. Lancaster, Lumina Creations has launched a new collection that is dominating the market. We need something revolutionary to reclaim our position." Austin drummed his fingers on the table, deep in thought. "Then let's create something unparalleled," he declared. "I want an open competition. A global challenge for jewelry designers. We need to find the brightest mind in this industry, no matter the cost." Thus, the largest jewelry design competition of the decade was announced, attracting talent from all corners of the world. Among the contestants was a woman no one expected, Anne Jolie. Yes, the same woman Austin had underestimated on the street, and had inherited her talent from her grandfather, a renowned jeweler who had taught her from an early age the art of crafting jewelry with unique and original designs. When she was younger, she had perfect vision, but due to complications, she lost her sight at a young age. For Anne, it was an irreparable loss, a deep wound that made her question her own identity. Yet, despite the hardship, she never forgot what her grandfather had taught her. Her work reflected not only the technique he had passed down, but also a gift that seemed to have been transferred directly to her. Her refined touch and sensitivity created pieces that transcended mere vision. To her, jewelry was not just an object of luxury, it was a story told through gold and gemstones. The competition took place at the Lancaster Diamonds headquarters, an imposing hall surrounded by gleaming glass and marble sculptures. The participants had 4 hours to create a unique concept. And sitting alone at her station, ran her fingers over the materials, feeling their textures and shapes. Her mind saw what her eyes could not. When time was up, the judges began evaluating the pieces. Austin observed each design impassively, his expression unreadable. However, when his eyes landed on Anne's creation, something shifted. Before him was a necklace with an asymmetrical design, where a central diamond was embraced by delicate white gold filaments, forming a pattern that evoked the sensation of touch and memory. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. "Who designed this piece?" Austin asked, intrigued. Armand hesitated before responding. "Anne Jolie, sir." Austin gave a slight nod, analyzing the necklace once more, but before he could say anything, Armand continued, his tone more cautious. "There's just one thing, sir, about her. And has a special condition. She's visually impaired." Austin's eyes snapped up abruptly, his previously indifferent expression now overtaken by a mix of surprise and disbelief. His fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the table, as if he needed to steady himself to process the information. Without another word, he rose, crossed the grand hall, and approached the creator of the extraordinary piece. And remained seated, her posture serene, her fingers lightly resting on the table as if absorbing the environment through touch. "Do you really think you can compete in an industry where visual perfection is essential?" he challenged, attempting to regain his usual air of superiority. Anne lifted her head slightly, her lips curving into a calm smile. "Perfection isn't in the eyes but in what we feel when we touch something. My hands see what the eyes overlook." Her response resonated within Austen in a way he hadn't anticipated. For the first time in years, someone was making him question his own worldview. He recalled the day he had encountered her on the street and how he had never imagined seeing her again, let alone as the winner of his own competition. The thought unsettled him more than he cared to admit. How could someone without sight create something so magnificent? To Austen, the jewelry world was one where visual perception was everything. Every detail, every sparkle, every subtle hue, all depended on the trained eyes of the designer. Yet, here was Anne proving him wrong. The technical judges could not ignore the masterpiece she had presented. The entire hall fell into silence as her piece was displayed, a mixture of awe and disbelief hanging in the air. The delicacy of the details, the harmony of the elements, the impeccable sophistication, everyone present knew that this piece was a true work of art. Even Austen, reluctant as he was, couldn't deny it, and was the winner of the competition. He tried to rationalize what had happened, but something inside him felt unsettled. Anne's words still echoed in his mind. Her talent was beyond technique, it was intuition, a connection he couldn't fully comprehend. As much as he resisted, he couldn't deny her keen insight and strength. Time passed, and despite his reservations, Austen hired Anne. But as they worked together, he began to see her in a new light. Her creativity was an enigma, a fascinating puzzle, and her courage stirred something inside him. Every day, Anne delivered flawless, meticulous, and innovative work. For her, being there was the fulfillment of a dream, a tribute to her grandfather, who had taught her everything about the art of jewelry making. Gradually, she became more comfortable in her role, gaining confidence and earning the admiration and respect of those around her. Her sincerity and determination brought a fresh energy to the Lancaster Diamonds atelier. Though some still harbored quiet doubts about her abilities due to her condition, and saw it as an opportunity to educate and inspire. To her, her blindness was not a limitation but a different way of perceiving the world. Austen, who had always maintained a rigid and authoritative demeanor, began to notice these subtle changes. At first, he tried to ignore them, but it was impossible not to see the way Anne won people over simply by being herself. What had once been irritation turned into a silent admiration. He caught himself watching her more than he should, intrigued not only by her talent but also by the strength and wisdom she carried. As the days passed, the walls he had built over the years began to crumble. For the first time, Austen felt that someone was slowly changing the way he saw the world. And without realizing it, he was allowing it to happen. That night, Anne had stayed late in the atelier, focused on the final details of the upcoming collection. The room was quiet, bathed in a soft light that illuminated her workstation, where her hands moved delicately over the pieces, ensuring everything was perfect. Across the building, in his office, Austen noticed her presence. He watched her for a moment through the glass wall, observing the way she worked with patience and precision. Something inside him urged him to get up and go to her. As he entered the atelier, Anne lifted her head, sensing his presence. "Working late?" Austen asked, crossing his arms as he leaned against the table beside her. "Yes," she replied with a small smile. "I want to make sure every piece is perfect before the launch. Each piece of jewelry has its own story, and I want them to tell the best one possible." He observed the subtle glow on her face, the passion evident in her voice. For the first time, he realized that her determination went beyond skill, it was love for what she did. "You really are fascinating, Anne," he said, his tone softer than usual. She raised an eyebrow, surprised. "And are you feeling all right, Austen? I never thought I'd hear that from you," she teased. He chuckled, shaking his head. "I was thinking." He hesitated. "The workday is over. What do you think about going out to dinner?" And hesitated for a moment. The invitation caught her off guard, but something in his voice made her realize that this wasn't just a casual dinner. "I think that would be a good idea," she finally replied. Dinner took place in an upscale restaurant, but unlike expected, the evening was relaxed and enjoyable. They talked about everything, laughed at random stories, and shared fragments of their lives. At one point, Anne opened up about the illness that led to her blindness, something she rarely did. "It was hard," she admitted, lowering her head slightly. "Losing my sight when I still had so much to see. At first, I thought I had lost everything." Austin, a man who had always been rational and distant, felt something tighten in his chest as he listened. "Have you ever considered seeking treatment?" he asked. Anne sighed. "I did. But the chances were low, and the cost was beyond reach. So, I accepted my condition and turned it into my strength." Austin remained silent for a moment, watching her with an unreadable expression. "What if I told you I could help you see again?" he said suddenly. Anne's eyes widened slightly in surprise. "Austin, you don't have to answer now. Just think about it," he said, offering her a gentle smile. The thought lingered in her mind, and spent days reflecting on Austin's proposal. The idea of regaining her sight was both terrifying and fascinating. While she pondered, Austin wasted no time. He sought out the best specialists in the field. He consulted with renowned ophthalmologists and learned that with a corneal transplant, there was a strong possibility that Anne could regain her vision. Excited by the news, he went to tell her everything. He found her in the atelier, immersed in her work. "And I have something important to tell you," he began, visibly enthusiastic. She paused what she was doing and turned toward him. "What is it?" "I spoke with specialists, and there's a real chance for you to see again," he said with a smile. "There's a transplant that could work in your case." And remained silent for a moment, absorbing the information. A mix of emotion and fear washed over her. "Austin, I don't know. What if it doesn't work? What if it's just an illusion?" He held her hands firmly. "You don't have to be afraid. If there's a chance, I want you to have it. I can take care of everything, and I want to do this for you." She hesitated for a moment, but the conviction in his voice and his sincere insistence reassured her. "All right. I accept." In the days that followed, Anne underwent all the necessary evaluations and procedures. Austin was by her side every step of the way, making sure she was comfortable and well. During this time, their bond grew even stronger. Anne realized she was falling for him, not just for what he was doing for her, but for the person he revealed himself to be day by day. Finally, the big day arrived. Austin was there when the surgery began, waiting anxiously for the results. The recovery was delicate and took time, but gradually, Anne started to see light again. The moment she realized it was overwhelming, and the first person she saw clearly after years of darkness was Austin. Tears filled her eyes as she smiled. "I can see," she whispered, overwhelmed with emotion. Austin gently cupped her face, feeling an indescribable sense of relief. "And I've never been happier." They embraced, knowing that this wasn't just the restoration of Anne's sight, it was the beginning of a new chapter together. Anne was mesmerized. Being able to see again was a gift she never imagined receiving, and everything seemed even more beautiful than in her memories. She could finally admire her own creations, the jewelry she had once designed with her soul, which she could only perceive through touch before. And above all, she could now look into the eyes of the man who had made it all possible. Austin had been by her side through every moment, and now more than ever, the feelings between them seemed impossible to ignore. The day of the collection launch had finally arrived. Lancaster Diamonds was celebrating, and Anne, in an elegant dress that accentuated her radiant beauty, stood beside Austin at the grand event. When it was time for the speeches, Austin took the microphone. The room fell silent as he looked at Anne, his voice filled with emotion. "Tonight is more than just the launch of a new collection. It is a celebration of an extraordinary woman who has transformed not only this atelier but also my life. When I met Anne, I was a man who thought he saw everything, but in reality, I was blind to anything beyond the surface of the world around me. She taught me to see with my heart, to understand that true value is not just in what we can touch or measure, but in what we feel. And you showed me that life is not just about achievements and power, but about connections and meaning. And so today, in front of everyone, I want to say that I love you, more than words can ever express." Tears welled up in Anne's eyes. The room erupted in applause, but to her, the only sound that mattered was the rapid beating of her own heart. She walked up to Austen and, with a trembling smile, took the microphone. "Austen, from the moment I met you, you challenged me, intrigued me, and in an unexpected way, made me believe that there was more for me than just darkness. You gave me the chance to see the world again, but more than that, you showed me that true love exists. And I love you, with all my heart and soul." Austen pulled her into his arms, and there, under the emotional gazes of everyone present, they shared a kiss that sealed not only that moment but everything they had lived together. Years later, they built both a family and an even greater empire. But for Austen, the greatest treasure he had ever found was not made of diamonds, it was the unbreakable love of Anne. And so, the man who once believed that life was just a game of power found his true fortune, the love that taught him to see beyond the surface. This story reminds us that the true value of life is not in what we can see, touch, or possess, but in love, resilience, and the ability to see beyond appearances. And shows us that our limitations do not define who we are, and that true strength comes from our hearts and perseverance. Austen, on the other hand, reminds us that we are often blind to what truly matters, and that love has the power to transform even the most hardened heart. God works in our lives in unexpected ways, placing people in our path who teach and shape us. He shows us that the real treasure is not found in material wealth, but in faith, compassion, and genuine love. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone special and spread this message of love and transformation. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel to enjoy more beautiful stories like this one. May we all learn to see with our hearts and cherish those whom God places in our lives. Thank you for following our stories. I hope to see you in the next one.